Of course, this harrowing ordeal would befall someone like me, a Brit, cast adrift in America, far removed from the familiar comforts of home, my people, and the norms I once took for granted. Here I was, a stranger in a land famed for its boundless opportunity, yet ensnared in a scenario that seemed plucked from a twisted fable. In the haunting echo of my past, I was bound to a role that had me wander the desolate aisles of a Walmart under the cloak of night, a place that stood as a monolith to consumerism, its lights never dimming, its doors never closing. My existence was a testament to endurance, a balancing act between the roles of provider and protector, all while wrestling with the spectre of financial instability. The relentless night shifts, a marathon from dusk till dawn, were a crucible in which my resolve was continually tested, a dark saga written in the ledger of my life. This Walmart was more than a mere marketplace. It was a vast expanse of commerce that served as a beacon to the night dwellers and the desperate. As the world outside fell into slumber, this giant awoke to a different breed of life, drawing in not just the insomniacs but those who thrived in the anonymity of darkness. My role as a night stalker placed me in the heart of this nocturnal ecosystem, a lone sentinel amid the shadows and silence, accompanied only by the sparse few who shared my shift and the distant rumblings from the bowels of the warehouse. On a night that bit with the frost of winter, a sense of unease crept over me, a prelude to terror. In the solitude of the cereal aisle, a figure loomed, his gaze slicing through the dimness, a harbinger of dread. Clad in shadows, his form was an enigma, his features obscured save for the chaotic tangle of his hair and the overstuffed backpack that seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a container for horrors unknown. His presence was an aberration, his interest in the mundane offerings of our shelves a poorly veiled masquerade. With a voice that seemed to slither across the floor, he inquired about the location of bread, his words carrying an undercurrent of malice. I directed him away, hoping to quell the rising tide of fear. Yet like a malevolent spirit, he refused to be exorcised. His intermittent appearances through the aisles, a psychological torment that frayed my nerves. Retreating to the relative safety of the snack aisle provided no solace, for he emerged once again, his intentions now unmistakably sinister. The air grew thick with his malevolence, his breath a noxious fume that suffocated. His advances, now devoid of any pretense, were a grotesque ballad of obsession and menace. In a moment of desperation, I spun a web of deceit, offering a fictitious number as a talisman, towered him off. But the nightmare was far from over. The crescendo of this macabre encounter unfolded in the employee lounge, where he confronted me with a venomous rage that petrified my soul. As he reached for his backpack, the atmosphere crackled with the electricity of impending doom, every instinct screaming for escape. In the heart-stopping moments that followed, the lounge transformed into a stage for a confrontation so chilling it threatened the very fabric of reality. He withdrew from his backpack an object that glinted ominously in the dim light, its nature obscured, but its intent unmistakably sinister. With a swift, predatory grace, he lunged towards me, his eyes alight with a malevolent fire that spoke of unspeakable horrors. The air was torn by a scream, mine or his, I could not tell, as we grappled in a dance of desperation. His strength was inhuman, his fingers like steel traps around my arm, pulling me into an abyss of madness. In that eternal moment, the world reduced to the sharp, visceral fear of being so close to the precipice of death. The cold edge of his weapon a whisper away from my skin. The stench of his breath, a fetid mix of decay and rage, filled my senses, a tangible cloud of terror. But it was the look in his eyes, a window into a soul consumed by darkness, that truly paralyzed me with fear. It was a gaze that promised not just physical demise, but the annihilation of hope, the extinguishing of any light I had left within me. Summoning a surge of adrenaline born from raw terror, I managed to break free from his grasp. My flight through the labyrinthine store was a blur of shadow and light, every echo in the empty aisles amplifying my fear. I could feel him, a presence as palpable as the dread that clung to me, weaving through the darkness just steps behind. The sanctuary of my car offered a brief respite from the madness, the night air a cold embrace that contrasted sharply with the inferno of fear I had just escaped. The drive home was a frantic flight from a reality that had morphed into something grotesque and otherworldly. As the distance from that nightmarish encounter grew, the events that had unfolded seemed almost too horrific to be real. Yet the terror that lingered was a grim reminder of the darkness that had touched my life. In the aftermath, I stood defiant against the demands of a manager who could not comprehend the depth of my terror. The ordeal left an indelible mark upon my psyche, a scar that spoke of the darkness that dwells just beyond the edge of the light, ever waiting for a moment to engulf us. This chapter of my life, though I wished fervently to close it, remained etched in the very core of my being, a solemn reminder of the night when the face of true horror revealed itself to me.